YouTube is now the single most popular job amongst young people in the UK and US, even beating out astronaut, and so if we extend the term to content creation, then the number climbs even higher. But what is the reality of doing YouTube as a job? Well, that's something I want to explain. I've tried to distill it into 6 things today, and we're going to be explaining it because, hello, I'm ABXToyCat, and this is a Let's Play, and I've got 3 good and 3 bad things, and I'll try to go from least to most surprising, but I'll start with the bad because I'm sure that's the bit that will surprise many. I think that job insecurity is the biggest one people don't realize. I think a decent number of people can appreciate that there are some YouTubers who are earning good money and some who are not earning any, if at all, but I think a lot of people can't really differentiate between how you move from one group to the other. Indeed, if you look at the Fireplace earnings channel, when you see over $1 million earned, you might not realize that they're not just a top 50% YouTuber or a top 90%, they're a top 99.9% example. There are very few YouTubers earning that much, and indeed, I think that if you take my entirety of my YouTube channels, all of them, across all of their history, I think we're just about scraping the surface of being the same as this one channel. So a lot of people don't realize that you can be out-earned by a simple GIF of a fireplace, and that is a very bizarre thing, but I think that many things in Minecraft, I think many things in life are bizarre. I mean, also many things in Minecraft. Look at this. Why is there a dungeon here? And why did I not excavate the bottom all these years ago? But I think that there are many bizarre things about YouTube, and this is kind of just scratching the surface, but it does raise the bigger point, which is that there is very little job security when you make YouTube videos. That is to say that at any point, you might think that some YouTube channels are just the ones who have made it, the ones who will get paid, but no, basically any day it's possible that that's the last day that the algorithm will recommend your videos, or even, if we're being more brutal, the last day that anyone cares. The algorithm can recommend it all it likes, but if you don't make videos that enough people are interested in, then does it really matter in the end? That is the question that YouTube asks and then gives a very brutal answer to, and it's the reality of working as a content creator. You have to make things that people are interested in, but many people won't say what they're interested in, or if they do say, they'll say things that aren't actually true, and so you kind of have to do the job of working out what it is that actually interests people, which is very, very hard, and ultimately you also have to be interested in it yourself. This creates a very, very deep and tricky field that I think we can simplify down to saying that yes, being a content creator does not have a lot of job security, and ultimately I think that if we look at the people that I started making YouTube videos around all those years ago, well, 2012 now, but if we compare there to now, basically none of these same people are still around, and most of the ones that are in a vastly different form, technically around, but doing something very, very different. This is just the natural way that things go, and it's something you have to get used to on YouTube, whereas in any other profession, it seems as though, for the most part, you don't really have to worry. For the most part, you can know that if you love making stairs, then as long as you're somewhat decent at your job, you'll probably find someone to hire you. I guess that would be a carpenter. For the most part, that if you're doing a job outside of your field going technologically extinct, as happened to miners, that's why they're abandoned mine shafts, am I right? But as happened to miners, and as some people fear will happen to their jobs with AI, it's very rare that your job just goes extinct, but genuinely for 90% of content creators, at least every few years, this seems to happen. I think that if you want a secure job in content creation, it is not in being a YouTuber, it is in doing something for another YouTube channel, perhaps we could say. So I think that is the most brutal point that many people do not realize, the fact that ultimately there is not a lot of job insecurity, but also I would say that there are, as far as like the biggest issues that I want to point out, I don't think it is the biggest. Job insecurity is something you deal with in quite a few professions, but it doesn't automatically make them bad, and indeed, YouTube is not bad. This is just me trying to be frank and honest with you, but if I'm being frank and honest with you, I also have to say something which you're not meant to as a YouTuber. You're meant to say that, yeah, my subscribers are the best people on earth, and there's not a single one of them that I don't think is incredible. Thanks to the hashtag Toy Army, you are the ones that are keeping this thing going, and you're meant to build identity, and that's what they try to teach you in than any YouTuber handbook. But actually, here's the scoop. I think that when you go onto YouTube and make content about something you're passionate about, you're always going to attract what I would describe as 3 types of comments. And here are all 3 types of comments. Let's go into them one by one, shall we? So the first type of comment here, we're going to remove this water source. Well, we talk about the first type of comment here, which is actually about a water source, because they say there's a lot of people out there who'd be envious of how naturally you don't care about how others criticize you. This is a really nice and genuinely, I might describe it as heartfelt comment. This is someone just being really nice. They don't need to be nice, but they are anyway. I think this is what a lot of people need in their day-to-day life. You know, you could say maybe the reason I need it, you know, like it's because I didn't get enough hugs from my parents. So you can come up with why people need or want validation, but people do want validation, and when you work hard on something, getting a comment like that is nice. But also, realistically, in a lot of fields, you kind of want, like I was saying about how people don't really know what it is they want to watch when it comes to a video, I think that having someone who does know, or even knows like, oh yeah, here's a handy thing you might not have missed, so this is not Yoshi, this is the reason why in last week's beta, I realized that, oh yeah, they actually nerfed these skeletons, so this is a type of comment that is handy to get to, but the audience you get is entirely not just dependent on the, content you make, but how it is shared too. You are, again, you're not just hoping that you become one of the 1% that can somehow have your videos still be relevant 5 years after you start making them, or if you're really lucky like me, 14 years after you start making them. Actually, I started my channel in 2009. I just started. I've been daily since 2012. But the truth is to be relevant after 15 years, you need to realistically be going to the people that leave comments like this. I got this comment that says, "Oh, calling Solver the Americanized way when it's the original spelling is insane." And people agree with this. And that kind of hurts a little bit more, knowing that like, oh yeah, this isn't just one insane person. This is like a bunch of people going, yeah, who's Toy Cat think he is for saying Sulfur's the wrong thing? And and in case you don't believe that, like, obviously you just learn to tune this out, and you kind of do, and you also have to say you do. If you don't have a thick skin on YouTube, you have to at least pretend that you do, because otherwise the crazies come after you. Crazies love to know that they are, like, actually affecting your mental well-being, and the moment that you let on that they are, they realize like, oh yeah, this is a great outlet for me. If maybe you want those nice comments because your parents didn't hug you enough, some people's parents did hug them enough, but also yelled at them, and so they need to yell at someone else. And so they'll have a comment like this one: "You can do better, Toy Cat. Don't resort to that clickbait bullshit." This was the most frustrating thing. This was within the first 5 minutes of a video being up, and it was a Seed Sunday where I found the most insane seeds. Literally, there is a village in a sulfur biome, and it's so unbelievable that they just assumed like, yeah, this is be clickbait. There's obviously not a sulfur village. Toy Cat just made this up. That is the most frustrating thing. Have you ever heard the phrase, "Don't judge a book by its cover"? Well, you are a book, and you're gonna have your cover be judged on YouTube. That's just the reality, and it's kind of tricky sometimes, I would say. I think it's kind of tricky a lot, I might even go as far as to say, but it is just one of the realities of making content. So I think that the third weird reality that people don't realize is that YouTube is a game. It seems a lot like, and indeed one of your focuses has to be, if you want to exist for more than 10 minutes, one of the key focuses on YouTube is always going to be making better content, if you want to call it that. I still feel like content is a disgusting word for YouTube videos. I'm the only one. Everyone loves to say content, but it's like, no, these are videos. These are things that I pour my heart into sometimes. I'll be honest, the Sulfur Seed video wasn't what I poured my heart into. It's when I poured my brain into, my research into. But then, these are things that I put a lot of love, care, and attention into. To call it content is ridiculous. But anyway, I think that YouTube is a game, and one of the weird things about YouTube being a game is that you have to get good at playing the game. In the same way that you might say that, working in an office, you think it's about doing office job stuff, but actually it's about office politics. The equivalent of that is YouTube politics, and indeed, beyond that, just being able to play the game to begin with. And you are not just, so that is to say, I think that YouTube is very largely about not just how good you make your videos, but how good you can make your marketing too. By the way, look at this. I'm trying to make more pathways around my world, and so now, as long as we can have this be at least somewhat visible, so I'll take some stairs here, and I'll make a little funky staircase pointing down with a staircase above it. and then another staircase over here too. I don't know what this will indicate, but it will at least show that this is intentional. Which is what you need to do on YouTube too. You need to come up with a marketing strategy, one that shows that you are being very intentional, but also that means that you need to do something weird, and you need to come up with really enticing titles and thumbnails. There are videos all the time that are not going to be successful, and this is so tricky and so hard to do. And I think that if you don't believe me, let me share with you one of the most bizarre things I found recently. So I watch a lot of I really like personal finance content, I think I should say. It is one of those like niches that I'm just kind of interested in, but it's also one of the niches that is most filled with people who are trying to make a bit of money, you know, a quick buck, and not necessarily caring about what they're saying. And if you don't believe that, let me show you the weirdest thing. Here is a YouTube video. Here is the title for it. Wow, bonds, they're really important. And here is another YouTube video with the exact same title. That's weird, but if you look at the content, the scripts are almost exactly the same. And here's a third YouTube video with the exact same title. That is a weird thing. And at first I thought, oh, the first two people must have plagiarized from the third. But it doesn't seem like that's the case at all. It seems like that, you know, none of them seem to be aware they're doing it, or they would have changed it more, or at least someone would have pointed it out. There is just a large number of people who are either I think what is happening here is you're seeing, you know, there is an employee that is in charge of coming up with titles or is coming up with scripts, maybe in charge of doing both, and the employee works for multiple channels in the same genre, and so just figured, what if we could get away with doing this multiple times? This is the reality of being a YouTuber now, is it's not just a one-man business with the job insecurity that comes with that, but also you have to create content for, you have to create realistically, in most genres, be that Minecraft, be that the finance world, be it any real popular space, vlogs, you probably need to have multiple employees too. That is the weird reality that we're getting into. And I think that if you don't think that that's weird, then I think that I heard a really good version of this from Folding Ideas. And since we're about to go on a flight anyway, let's put on the in-flight entertainment. Folding Ideas said this in his MrBeast video.
Professional YouTubers need to put a lot of thought into the title and thumbnail because we want to eat. We know that it's a bit naughty, a bit tacky.
This is one of the weird kind of contradictions about YouTube that you always have to be towing the line on. Even when you're coming up with ideas and running them yourself and trying to, build and design and make the videos yourself, you kind of have to do some stuff sometimes that, you know, I think in the video I just referenced are described as anti-art, but that I wouldn't go that far with. I would say that, yeah, you are sometimes tasked with the impossible job of coming up with a really cool idea, but then having to scrap it because you can't work out how to market it to someone, because they need to, you know, people don't watch videos based on the videos, they choose to watch videos based on the thumbnail, based on the title, and so if that is not interesting enough, then it doesn't matter about anything else. This is a very brutal reality of YouTube, but it means that, yeah, if you can come up with a really good title and thumbnail, then kind of to a certain extent, you know, like the video has to just be good enough. But if you have an incredible video with a just good enough title and thumbnail, it won't do well. And like I said, when you have employees involved, this means that actively, if you work on stuff that you are passionate about, but that you don't know how to market to people, oh no, I brought andesite slabs with me. I thought it was andesite, not diorite. This is the sort of mistake I make on YouTube all the time, where I miscalculate how many people will be excited by something. And again, if you have a team of people, it's cool because it helps you, saves you a bit of time, or realistically allows you to compete on the level of content that is being made. But also, in some cases, it means that, oh, whoopsie, you know, we made something and now you've actually lost money on it. I have worked, in some cases, I've spent about 10 hours working on a video and then made less money on the video than it costs to pay someone to edit it or make a thumbnail. This is the reality of YouTube. This video, if I'm leveling with you, it is unlikely to make its costs back. I'm hoping that some number of people will subscribe to this and then maybe they'll watch future videos, but running YouTube is running a precarious business, and that is just something you have to do now. That is just the expected minimum to be on the platform. So those are 3 very, very negative points I just made about YouTube. And you might say to yourself, like, Toadcat, do you like doing this actually? And the answer is yeah, I really love doing this. But I kind of wanted to start with the the negative first. I kind of wanted to start with the bits that you're probably not expecting, but I do still want to share the unexpected positives, because I think everyone knows that one of the positives of being a YouTuber is if you are invested in ego, you'll probably have some people that will validate that. If, like me, you have this like strong desire to share your gameplay with people, I don't know where this comes from. Again, is this if anyone out there wants to be an armchair psychologist, is this because, you know, like I would say, "Mom, look at me, I'm doing a cannonball," and then I would look over and she wasn't actually looking? You know, you tell me if you feel like being an armchair psychologist. But I will say I've always loved sharing my gameplay. My first YouTube channel was dedicated to sharing Guitar Hero because I just wanted people to see what I was up to. There was no money to be made, and even the earliest videos on this YouTube channel, it was because I got a 99 in RuneScape and I really wanted people to see it. Well, I think it was actually a 92 in RuneScape, but still, the whole reason that this YouTube channel exists is not actually down to the money, which makes all of the business things possible and makes all of that possible. It's kind of down to the gameplay stuff. But I will say that one of the things that I've discovered that genuinely is a bit odd to me, maybe not to everyone else, is that one of the best and most surprising things about YouTube is how good it is to have an artistic outlet. This is something that like makes sense if you're an artistic person. For sure, don't get me wrong there, but you might be surprised if you're not a particularly artistic person, just how relieving and satisfying and useful it is to have a place where you can make things and put it out there. This is, so again, I'm saying this not because like, oh yeah, I feel an obligation as a YouTuber. I'm saying it feels good on a personal level. If you made YouTube videos and no one ever watched them, I think the process of having an idea, seeing it come together is really satisfying. I also find it to be really enjoyable when people enjoy that idea too. So again, like the downside of coming up with an idea, like are tariffs the solution to a Minecraft server? I think a great video that teaches comparative advantage really great, but ultimately, comparative advantage described in Minecraft wasn't a game selling concept, and so apparently no one watched it, and so apparently that's a lot of money down the drain. But even though it is money down the drain, I still think that like it was really satisfying to have made, partially because of this exact same thing that I'm just referencing. I think that it's really cool when you have an idea and you get to see it come to life. And I think that there is a real artistic outlet, because sometimes it just, you know, sometimes it's nice to see that, see your vision become real. And, you know, like sometimes I have an idea of like, wouldn't it be cool to start a pub, but like the prices of the drinks are, you know, like they go up and down based on their demand, and, or wouldn't it be cool to, do this or do that. Everyone has all sorts of weird ideas like this, I'm sure, and YouTube is such a great way to get those out there. I had an idea of what if, again, way before AI, which would probably do this in a fraction of the time, I had an idea of like, what if we used RNG to build a house? What would happen in that case? And the answer is it looks absolutely awful. You do not want to you don't want to use randomness to build a house. You should use your, you know, this is a crazy idea here, I know. But if you are going to build a house, my recommendation is build it using your own eyes and hands and vision. Is that a reasonable take? I hope that's a reasonable take. But that is what I do genuinely believe. I think that if so I need to find a crafting table, and I assumed there would be one over here, but I just don't see it. I've got one of these super old village wells that never turned into a village. Maybe I should do something with this. I think this is the perfect example of an artistic vision. Like, Minecraft itself has that, like, real self-actualization level of, like, you can imagine what would it be like if we turn this into something, and then you can just start building the something. I looked around my world, and, you know, as you can probably work out, I decided that I needed an extra path going around it. I have paths connecting all of my old Xbox 360 builds together, but I slowly am using more space because just over time I get more ideas. And so I've decided, rather than building the same paths I used in my main world, what if I built different paths that look different based on where they're going? So this is where I used andesite. Aha! I wasn't crazy, I just was thinking of a different path. So this is the path that takes you to my tutorial world, and look at that, it branches off, giving a different color. this is the path that takes you, is going to take you round to where my train station is, made of pale oak. Having different paths in different colors is just a fun way to let people know where they're going, and even if they don't know where they're going, it's a fun bit of visual noise. And ultimately, the reason I'm building so many paths in my world is because I find it to be fun. Okay, so with that said, I think the artistic outlet is one of the biggest ones, but I think that the second biggest one, this is a bit abstract, but please try and follow me. The second biggest one is probably no argument about being worth more than you earn. This is, I think, one of the biggest sources of discontent for a lot of people who are, you know, what you might call regular employed, is you don't know if your boss is screwing you. Let me put it this way. I saw a tweet once that was something along the lines of, I work in a coffee shop, I make 50 coffees an hour on average, but I only earn enough to be able to afford 5 coffees an hour. And they looked at that and said, yeah, this is, you know, you can clearly see my boss is creaming 45 coffees worth of, you know, after I, you know, like, make the first 5 coffees, the next 45, my boss is stealing from me. They are using my labor to make their money. And there might be some truth to that if you are doing this in the middle of a field, making the coffee in your hands, you could argue. I do think there's something true in that. But also, there's the complicated factor of like, well, there's lots of fixed costs in a business, and you know, there's lots of like, if 50 people come by, you'll make 50 coffees worth of money. But if no one comes by, as long as the business is open, you probably still get paid. This is, I mean, I don't know how your coffee shops work, but this is something I think everyone in employment, if you are an overthinker, will get to at some point before concluding like, oh yeah, I don't know how I feel about that. It's something that I think can cause people a decent amount of discontent, but you don't have that on YouTube. You get paid what you are worth, and what you are worth can, I guess statistically speaking, is $0 for most people. I guess you get paid based on how many views you could get, you say, but there's an objective metric. YouTube takes 45% of all of your earnings. You know, they're hosting your video after all and sharing it with people. YouTube takes 45% of what your stuff is worth, and then you get the other 55%. That means that you don't have any of those like worries in your head. There's no negotiations that are needed, nothing like that. And that is, I think, handy for some number of people. I think that, yeah, again, like in the current world where we are increasingly seeing you know, people who are like just not actually sure. You know, in some cases it's people feeling like they are being ripped off when actually, you know, like in some cases I'm sure there are businesses that are losing money to employ people because they, you know, like I learned recently that there's a store on Oxford Street. It's the busiest street in the UK. There's a store there that costs $30,000 a month in rent. It is a ludicrous amount of money, and the mobile network that owns it, because it's a mobile network, maybe that's obvious, maybe it's not, but there's a mobile network that owns it, and they never make anywhere close to 30,000 in sales, you know, let alone profit. They don't make 30,000 in sales. So why do they keep the store? Well, they're like, well, it's vaguely advertising. People might see the store and then later decide to buy something from the business because they think that we're a big deal. And so it's really hard to like attribute. Therefore, as a result, those employees are being paid, you know, as an advertising expense at best, and, you know, out of money that is not being made at worst. You know, you get the idea here. There's a really complicated world of how money actually works and how much you should be paid that I think you don't have on YouTube. You get paid as much as, you know, as much as you're worth, and sometimes YouTube will say very rude things about what you're worth, but at least you can take it up with a machine rather than a person, which is a, you know, okay, if I can, this is very slightly off topic, so I'll keep this short, but don't you think it's weird, like when there's like an AI chatbot that is empowered to negotiate? Because it feels a bit like, yeah, if the AI chatbot is able to give me money right now, then of course I want the money in a way that I don't know if I would from a person. Like, I don't know, like, whenever you get an Amazon refund now, the chatbot will say like, okay, we know the item didn't arrive, or we know the item is faulty, but instead of accepting a refund, how about you keep the item and we'll give you £3 instead? And you have to be like, no, I don't have the item. And even if I did, I clearly don't want it. £3 won't make me happy. But some number of people say it does make them happy, and so anyway, so there we go. There's my very, very minor little petty thing here. Okay, so my final thing, I would say, the biggest point about being a YouTuber that I think should be more widely discussed is the flexibility, or, you know, what you might call being your own boss. Being your own boss is the best part about being a YouTuber. This is just factual. I think that there are other jobs that give you a similar degree of flexibility. That is very true. But I think that when it comes to flexibility, YouTube is the career path. I think that like the between that and the artistic outlet, I see why it is so popular with white collar types who have to work a 9 to 5 and are very much limited to what their boss wants them to do and when, no matter how fun or good or wrong it is. I kind of understand why it is that it's so popular, but the biggest single thing that I appreciate about what I do versus a normal job is the flexibility. In school, I really struggled, I think, with the idea that, like, yeah, you are there for these number of hours, and then when you're done, you're meant to do a bit of homework every week. I would be like, no. You want that many hours out of me? That's it. The moment I go home, I'm not doing any homework. And obviously, a lot of teachers try different things to get me to do it. But I found the most successful thing, the way that helped me most with doing homework, is I would just do homework in the lessons. You had to do other people's homework in their lessons, but like I would race through the work for a lesson as fast as I could. They would assign a fixed amount of work, and then I would start working on homework. And then that way, even if I was caught, the teacher could be like, "Oh, you shouldn't be doing that here. Why are you doing homework? It's not home." And I could be like, "Well, I've done all of your classwork." They'd be like, "No, you haven't. Let me see." And they'd look and be like, "Well, you have, but you still shouldn't." And they would back down a little bit because they just assumed like anyone doing this is doing something more wrong than that. I think that this is a hugely interesting part of YouTube, is that you get to decide when it is that you are working, and that is, I think, the biggest draw in. But it also has to be said that I think for some people it's the biggest curse. Recently, I found myself in a desire to get some get some numbers up because I needed to earn more to whatever reasons. You can I'm not going to go too deep into that, but you can probably work out, like, yes, money is great. It can be used to buy goods and services, and sometimes you want more goods and services than you have. Okay, or maybe you want the number of goods and services that you have that you currently can't afford. Anyway, so the interesting thing about this is, like, okay, when I was trying to, like, find myself working more, I would be like, yeah, so what I'm going to do is I'll just work every day in the week. But what ended up happening is I would start just naturally through, like, call it burnout, call it whatever you want to call it. But eventually I would find myself in a place where I had far less, like, energy each day. So I would cap out at work at about 6 hours. And so working a 7-day week, I was still only getting 42 hours of work out of myself. Being your own boss, people think means, oh, I would be the best boss. I would let my employees off all the time. I would do, but it's like, no. You still have to get the work done. And so there's this critical flexibility that is the best single thing about being a YouTuber, but also the worst. The number of people I speak to who are like, yeah, I just get X number of weeks off a year. I live in the UK, so it's at least 5. I get 5 weeks off a year, and I'm not allowed to be contacted by my employer. And it's like, yeah, well, I could decide to not be contacted by my employer, but if a big update comes out and I'm not there to cover it, then a huge amount of my revenue for the month is going to be gone. I'm not getting paid when I'm on holiday. I'm just, I'm choosing not to be getting paid for that amount of time. When you take into account the fact that you need to be the one paying your own holiday pay, when you take into account all of these things, the flexibility can be one of the biggest curses of being a YouTuber. And so it's one of the hardest things to get right, in my opinion. But that's what makes it, I think, such a glorious time. I think that when you do it right, when you work super hard, I used to work closer to 80-hour weeks on YouTube. When you're doing it right and you're doing it also, and you're doing a great job and you're killing it, it is the best of jobs in the world. There is nothing that feels better. I guess besides perhaps doing the same thing but being a fireplace channel. When you are killing it on YouTube, nothing feels better. When you are doing a great job, it feels like the best job in the world. But sometimes you can be working a normal number of hours, say 40 hours a week. I'd say that's close to what I average if you exclude bathroom breaks, if you exclude, like, time spent, if you exclude a lot of things that you might include in a normal job. I think I spend about 40 hours a week on content right now. But that means that compared to my peak in the 2020s, well, the late 2010s, when I was working 80 hours, YouTube views are drastically lower. Not just half lower, but because of the compounding effects of things, more like, 60 to 70% lower. To have a somewhat normal looking schedule has required me to have a much less, much lower than usual views per video. And that is something that I think a lot of people struggle with. That's why, to bring this full circle, there is job insecurity, is because you can have, you can be really killing it in certain levels, but you're only going to be, unlike most jobs, you're only killing it for as long as your next video is managing to interest the right audiences in the right places at the right times. And, oh yeah, is this the wrong market for a video about economics? Then whoopsie, none of that for you anymore. Oh, is this the wrong, is this the wrong time to make a video about that? Well, guess it's not going to be seen by people. Even the very format themselves, people love a bit more reacty style content now than they do. I think video essays are super popular. Reacty style stuff is really popular. There are trends, and if you don't follow those trends, it is to your own peril. And you can tell yourself that, like, oh yeah, it's all secondary, but it's kind of not. And so I think, to give you the real conclusion here, to give you my real opinions, I think that YouTube is the weirdest job. I think that even job doesn't feel like the right word. I think that YouTube is like running a business that sells things that you made, but you sell them for free and you beg people to take them from you. People don't actually decide if they're going to take them from you. There's an algorithm that may feed them a thumbnail that they may decide to click. And so it makes for one of the most creatively fulfilling endeavors. I love having a vision and following it through. And when it goes well, it's awesome. This Let's Play, believe it or not, I did have to have a vision of like, let's have some really chill gameplay. So it's just been working on the paths around my world, because there are lots of paths to being a YouTuber, and all of them are very, very different. I think that this is the hardest actual reality. There's an episode of Family Guy where Peter opens up a restaurant, and the restaurant isn't doing too well, but Joe, his wheelchair friend, he says that he'll recommend it to his friends, and Peter feels like that's incredible. Until, all of the restaurant's really popular, but it's mostly seen as a restaurant to eat at if you are handicapped. And, that's no big deal. But if you have an ego, you might say to yourself, like, well, we should be good for, the regular people too, the non. And so what happens is it makes everyone mad when they try to discriminate against it. People want to have a certain type of audience. People want to have a certain type of community, and they want to make a certain type of video. But in reality, I think the best advice I could actually give, if after hearing all of that, you say, yeah, those positives are way better than those negatives, I think the best thing I could actually possibly say is that finding a niche that works for you is more important than anything else. There are YouTube channels that are starting today and are being successful, contrary to the idea that you just need to be a dinosaur like me. 15 years, wow, that's impossibly old, am I right? But, the truth is, you don't just have to... the fact that 15 years is a dinosaur on YouTube, by the way. Imagine any other industry, like, yeah, I've been working in this office for 15 years. That makes me basically a veteran. You would be very concerned about that office's culture. But yeah, I think that there we go. Look at that. We're here. It's a bit messy. It needs some cleaning up. But now we've got a pathway that takes us to this bridge, and then this bridge will be able to take us to this edge, where again, look at this. Get this. This pathway then connects to my slightly missing thing over here. But then we have a pathway that goes right off a cliff. And then we can either fly down, or we can just look at it. Realistically, we should put some, like, ice here so we can, like, fly the boat off. Also, realistically, we need more wood, which is now a fun reminder, because I think that this video has run out of steam. I hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, perhaps consider joining the team. That sounds like I'm asking to hire you. If you want to be hired, send an email to toycatassistant@gmail.com. That's right. Look at that. That's another person we have to have on the, being paid to do stuff to actually make this function. They also edit, if you're curious. But there's a lot of different pieces that make the YouTube thing work. And if you have enjoyed what my pieces have created, consider subscribing. And if you don't enjoy them, then I don't know. Consider unsubscribing. Hope you all enjoyed this video, because I'll see you next time. Goodbye.